Hello and welcome to the 2023 Connecticut Academic Library Conference. We're really so glad everyone's here. We would like to thank the Connecticut Council of Academic Library Directors and EBSCO hosts for supporting this year's conference. Please be sure to stick around for EBSCO's presentation at 2:30 later today. My name is Susan Slager-Mativier and I will be moderating the session advocating for change in academic libraries, supporting students through digital equity initiatives. And if anyone has any, issues, technical issues, I can help with that. We have 4 presenters today. Maria Bernier from UConn Library Avery Point, Lisa Gugliotti from Middlesex Community College, Susan Skaza from Norwalk Community College, and Karen Tatarka from UConn Library, Hartford. I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items before we begin. As you probably heard, the session will be recorded. The live captioning is on and will be available throughout the presentation. Please make sure that you are muted during the presentation, and we can pause at the end for questions. So I will now turn it over to you guys.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan. And thank you to everyone who's been able to join us for our breakout session today on advocating for change in academic libraries, supporting students through digital equity initiatives. For those of you who might just be joining us now, I'd like to take this opportunity to reintroduce our panelists and give them a big shout out for all the time and effort they've put into pursuing digital equity work. It's really become quite a passion project. So we represent the Connecticut Libraries and Partners for Digital Equity, commonly called CTLPDE, their academic library committee. But we come from colleges and universities around the state. So as Susan just said, we have Susan Skaza, who is a digital and instruction librarian at Norwalk Community College. We have Lisa Gugliotti, who is a digital systems librarian at Middlesex Community College. We have Maria Bernier, who is the director of the UConn Library at Avery Point. And I'm Karen Tatarka, the director of the UConn Library at Hartford. So all of us have been involved in CTLPDE's work for some time. But for those of you who might be unfamiliar with this initiative, my role today is to give you a quick overview of what we've been working on. So the state library established, oops, sorry, my slide's not advancing. There we go. So the state library established a digital inclusion task force in 2021 with representatives from libraries of all sizes and types, including academic libraries, many public libraries, and special libraries. Also part of the task force was the Connecticut Broadband Policy Office and the Commission for Educational Technology. And the task force was really established in a response to the COVID crisis, which, as we all know in our profession, really laid bare and exacerbated the digital divide in Connecticut. So CTLPDE is the group that emerged from this task force. And the charge of this group, as is written on the screen, is to ensure that community voices and the frontline experience of library staff are elevated and included in the statewide conversation about digital equity, best practices, and policy priorities. So understandably, libraries as information and education centers have been involved in this work for some time and have valuable experience to share. And we want to make sure that that experience is recognized. So CTLPDE is an open group, and members of the library community are welcome to sit in on the monthly meetings to learn more about the work and participate in it. You can use the QR code on the screen or the URL to learn more about the work that's been accomplished and also to sign up for notifications of meetings. So I just want to give a quick overview of the digital divide in Connecticut. So just last year, Connecticut's Department of Energy and Environmental Protection released a report which gives current information on the digital divide in Connecticut. Just as an aside, it's DEEP's Office of Telecommunications and Broadband that will be administering the broadband infrastructure programs. So that's why the reports are coming from DEEP. I was initially a little confused about that. But according to the report for 2022, 15 to 25%, depending on the source of the data that's being used, of eligible locations do not have broadband access in Connecticut. So an eligible location is defined as an individual unit, like a house or an apartment. So that means broadband is available, but not subscribed to. And as you can see from the map, which we pulled right from the report, these locations are highly concentrated in rural areas. And for those of you who might not be familiar with Connecticut, that's the northwest corner and the eastern part of the state, but also urban areas with higher than average poverty levels. So on this map, we have Hartford and Waterbury, Danbury, Bridgeport, and New Haven. You see more concentrations there as well of lack of broadband access. In the highest poverty areas indicated on this map, where the poverty rate is over a third, over 30% of locations lack a broadband subscription. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of another report. It's a little bit older, towards the start of the pandemic, that came out from the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities in Dalio in 2020. So these numbers may have changed a little bit, but it notes more disparities in access. So 36% of low-income households, 35% of Latinx residents, 34% of Black residents or households, and 44% of residents with disabilities lack broadband access at home. And then we have the senior population, where 36% of residents age 65 or older lack broadband at home. And of course, what ties into that then is large screen devices like laptops or desktop computers that allow people to access the internet and use it effectively. So you can see kind of the correlations, of course, that 33% of households with incomes below the state's median income do not have a computer. At the time of this report, the median income in the state was $75,000. 31% of Connecticut residents age 65 and older do not have a computer at home. It's 37% of Hispanics, 37% again of those really urban areas with high poverty rates do not have computers, and 31% of African Americans do not have a working computer at home. So it has become CTLPDE's goal to ensure that Connecticut residents have the tools necessary to support education, health, well-being, economic prosperity, and the ability to function fully in society. CTLPDE accomplishes this by advocating for digital equity through universal, affordable residential broadband, devices for all those who lack them, and digital life skills training and technical support. So during the pandemic, many libraries stepped up to start work towards achieving these goals through services such as device loans and digital navigators, who do everything from helping people to sign up for a broad, affordable connectivity program, and also how to use their large screen devices. So I'm going to turn the presentation now over to Maria, who's going to talk a little bit more about what CuddlePed has done to achieve the goals.
Thanks, Karen. So far, the Connecticut Libraries and Partners for Digital Equity has focused really on the work that public libraries are doing in order to bridge the digital divide. And the Libraries and Partners accomplish this through advocating and involving partners in digital equity work, educating the community about digital equity through public events, such as the wildly successful October 2022 Advancing to Digital Equity Forum. And we've been sharing libraries' successful digital equity initiatives at our meetings and among our partners, and just trying to get the word out through numerous voices. Last year, the Connecticut Libraries and Partners for Digital Equity distributed a survey to all public libraries in Connecticut to do an asset map. We asked many questions about what services they're offering, what equipment they're offering, skills, training. And we created a visual reference that allows our community partners and residents and basically any member of the public to see what digital equity services are offered around the state and to advocate for the integral nature of public libraries in this work. And now what we as CTLPDE's Academic Library Committee are doing is to extend the group's work to the academic environment. So we looked at public libraries, now we want to look at academic libraries. We want to make sure there's an understanding and a recognition of student needs, especially as they're transitioning from high school to higher education, in order for them to be successful in this new environment. And so we conducted a separate survey of academic libraries in Connecticut this spring, specifically timed to gather information. This is a really critical time frame right now, as the state has recently received some funding to develop a digital equity plan. And that plan will detail how the state will spend its future federal digital equity grant, which is expected to be $100 million over 5 years. So there's potentially a lot of money coming to Connecticut to address some of these issues. We wanted to make sure that academic libraries and academic environments were on the radar for that. We want to make sure that consideration is given to higher education in support of potentially existing successful programs, as well as developing new programs where they are needed. So we'll hop to the next slide, and you'll see that our goals for this presentation, for this survey, were kind of tied to CTLPDE's larger goals. These goals were also detailed in our email to library directors, but primarily we're just determining what are the academic libraries' current engagement in digital equity work, right? Broad goal. And then we wanted to take that data and to create a collaborative resource and a summary analysis to share with our academic library peers, drawing on their digital equity work. That was the goal, that was the dream. And then we wanted to advocate for continued support for those digital equity programs, helping to ensure that all students have what they need to be successful in higher education. As we know, it can be heartbreaking when a student goes through all of the work. They have graduated from high school, they have applied for college, they've been accepted, they've matriculated, they've started their classes, and the barrier now that they're seeing is that library technology, that broadband, the computer, and having the digital skills to be able to use it is preventing them from succeeding in higher education. So we're trying to figure out how to overcome that. We initially sent our survey requests to 36 academic library directors in Connecticut. Those are the email addresses we could find. And we got 13 responses. And statistically, yes, that's more than a third. Perhaps that's statistically significant, but it didn't feel numerically significant given the small size of the group we had to work with. We did hear back from 5 two-year colleges and 8 four-year colleges. We started thinking about that response rate and realized there was a lot going on, which we're going to hear about further, just in terms of a community college consolidation throughout the state that took priority for so many people, but some other issues too, that maybe those target libraries are still understaffed coming out of COVID. We'd love to, in the future, when we repeat this survey, send our invitations to all academic library staff, not just the director, recognizing that many staff can be involved in digital equity initiatives, and recognizing that, frankly, this may not be the highest priority for staff at that particular library, and they may not have the time to respond. I think many of us are still feeling like we are constantly putting out fires and reprioritizing. So we would love to do the survey again and repeat many of our questions, but I am going to turn you over to Susan for more details about what we learned in the survey.
Hi, thank you. So yeah, my name is Susan, and I'm going to introduce some of the survey findings that we were able to get. Although, like Maria said, we didn't get as many responses as we were hoping for, and are really therefore unable to draw any definitive conclusions about digital equity in the academic higher education sphere in Connecticut. We still want to share some of the response data we did get to illustrate what kind of information we were hoping to gather and why we think it's important. So the following responses that we're going to show you were selected based on their connection to the 3 components of digital equity, which are access to affordable residential broadband internet, access to affordable internet-enabled devices that fulfill user needs, and the digital skills and tech support necessary to use and adopt that technology. So this first slide that you're looking at illustrates a number of important points related to digital equity challenges encountered by college students in Connecticut. The first main point is that overall, we really lack the data to know what challenges our students are really facing when it comes to technology. 77% of respondents answered that they don't know if their institution collects data on digital equity challenges faced by students. And only one institution answered in the affirmative, yes, they know that their institution collects this data. This indicates a real lack of information on the subject, which obviously makes it challenging for us to advocate for devices and program funding if we don't have the evidence to show that there's a need for digital equity programs. This also means we can assume that the rest of the data on this slide is based primarily off of librarian observations rather than student attestation or hard data. This isn't to discount librarian observations of student needs and challenges, but rather to demonstrate how little information we currently have regarding student digital equity needs. The second point is that despite this lack of hard data, we do know that our students face a number of digital equity challenges that can have a huge impact, like Maria said, on their academic success and retention rates. As you can see, 77% of respondents listed at least 2 digital equity challenges for their students, the most common of which were access to a reliable internet connection off campus, access to a reliable device off campus, and the digital skills necessary to navigate college courseware and resources. As you can imagine, completing your college education would be incredibly difficult without reliable internet access or an adequate device. So if we can provide resources and services to address those challenges, our students will have the support they need to succeed regardless of their financial circumstances. And I do think that this is where academic libraries can step in if we have the information and skills and knowledge to do that. Resources, I guess I should say. So lastly, I just want to point out that 11 out of our 13 respondents listed access to reliable broadband outside of the institution or library as a challenge for their students. And I just want to ask that you guys all try to please remember that statistic, as it's going to prove relevant again momentarily. Karen, could you go to the next slide, please? Great, sorry. Okay, yes. So on this next slide, sorry, now I have to. So now that we've looked at some of the digital equity challenges that our students are facing, it's time to look at some of the ways Connecticut academic libraries are addressing those challenges. When asked if their library lends equipment or devices that support digital equity initiatives, 8 respondents, or 62%, answered yes. And 4 out of the 5 libraries that answered no said that another department on campus was providing this service. So added together, this means that 12 out of 13 institutions provide some form of technology loans to students, which is excellent. So it's really good news. The chart here also shows the types of equipment loaned by the 8 academic libraries that offer this service. All of them provide laptop loans. The next most popular equipments loaned by libraries are graphing calculators and headsets. And laptops and graphing calculators in particular help support students' needs for reliable devices beyond campus. Also, remember, just a slide back, I asked you to remember that 11 out of 13 libraries said that access to a reliable internet connection was a challenge for their students. Despite this being a clear and common problem for many college students in Connecticut, only 2 libraries said that they offer Wi-Fi hotspots for students to borrow. This is likely due to their high cost, which Lisa will discuss later, but it also serves to demonstrate the need for data to effectively advocate for the funding to support these initiatives and programs. So to wrap up this slide real quick, for those of you that might be considering starting your own technology lending programs, some of the best or common practices that we were able to identify includes setting basic eligibility requirements, such as only lending to currently registered students in good standing with the library, and variable loan periods depending on the device. So for example, many libraries said that their laptops go out for a semester, while other devices frequently have shorter loan periods. There were some libraries that mentioned additional eligibility criteria, but I'm not really going to cover that today. So please, if anybody's interested in that, feel free to reach out after this presentation or ask during our Q&A portion, and we'll be happy to share that information with you. Lastly, one stat that we didn't include on this slide, but I think is important to mention, is that 50% of respondents who indicated they offered tech loans also indicated they received some form of aid from their campus IT department in maintaining devices between loans. This support and campus partnership can make technology lending programs much easier for libraries to manage, especially those with limited staff. So this just might be something to consider and remember when you're trying to plan your own program. All right. Next, please. Thank you. And all right. So beyond technology loans, some of the other ways Connecticut academic libraries are supporting digital equity are through digital skills training and device support. I won't go into too much detail here since you can really see a lot of the information for yourselves on the slide, but I do want to draw your attention to a couple areas that I think are important to note. So although academic libraries are very good, as we can see, and as we know, just by being ourselves, at providing the type of digital skills training we associate with our job, mainly information literacy instruction and things like that, we, based off this data, we appear to be significantly less invested in other digital skills training that really could benefit our students, such as training on basic computer skills or specific course software. There are like a number of possible reasons that this is the case, including lack of time or staff to assist or teach students basic computer skills, the belief that this is just not our job to provide such training to students, and or the belief that students will learn the skills they need from another campus resource, as just a few examples of why we might not be so focused on this as academic libraries. So for now. I also think that as academic libraries personally, or just people working in higher education, we often believe that students are coming in with the digital skills that they already need to succeed academically, which really isn't always the case. So as a brief example or short story, I had a conversation with one of my colleagues recently, and we realized that we expect a lot of our students, and in this case, my colleague expected her daughter, who's in, I think, high school, to really know how to use Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and thought that they were being taught this in high school and other productivity software, but they really aren't. More often than not, they're frequently not explicitly taught how to use this kind of software, and are instead forced to figure out how to use it on their own throughout their education. As such, it would probably prove really valuable to our students if academic libraries were to offer programs or some form of training on how to use these different pieces of software. Such programs could be done solely by the library if there's available staff, time, and interest, or they could be done a little bit more simply by partnering with another department or faculty member on campus that wants to actually do the training, and you could use the library space and equipment to make life a little bit easier. All right, is that one? Next, please. Thank you. So moving on, the following slides will look at the background and future of respondent digital equity programs. So this slide provides a brief overview of the circumstances under which respondents instituted their digital equity programs. Something that I personally found particularly interesting, sorry, I'm having issues with words today, was that over 62% of respondents began offering digital equity programs, including technology loans, before the COVID-19 pandemic. I actually expected most libraries to have started such programs earlier mid-pandemic, when remote learning highlighted and exacerbated the need for digital equity services. But I was very pleasantly surprised to see that many had started this work beforehand. So that's it for this slide. All right, thank you. And on this final slide of data, you can see what respondents said, how current programs are being funded and how secure these libraries feel in their ability to continue offering these programs in the future, given their current sources and level of funding. You will notice that only 31% of respondents believe their digital equity program and funding to be sustainable beyond the next 5 years. This percentage is actually less, only 25%, if we only look at libraries that have current technology loan programs. So as a whole, all colleges that offer some form of digital equity programs, only 31% believe that their funding and programs are sustainable. Of those, the 8 that offer technology loan, only 25% think that their level of funding is sustainable over the next 5 years. This really isn't surprising, considering the significant cost to purchase and maintain these devices. But again, it just, for me, it serves to emphasize the importance of advocating for funding to support these programs into the future. Lastly, this concludes my overview of the findings that we have. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who will discuss the digital equity initiatives taking place on her campus as a mini case study. But before I do, I just want to mention that while we don't have a large data set, if you are interested in seeing what other information we collected through our survey, please feel free to reach out after the conference and we will be happy to share our data with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. For those of you who are attending this conference from outside of Connecticut, we wanted to just talk a little bit about how the colleges are set up here. CSCU is a system of 17 public colleges and universities with 3 units. We have 4 Connecticut State Universities, 12 community colleges, and Charter Oak State College, which is online. And this system does not include the University of Connecticut, which is a separate institution. Effective fall 2023, the 12 community colleges are merging into Connecticut State Community College. Students will have the ability to use financial aid, register for classes, and access services easier at any of the 12 campuses. So librarians have been hard at work planning and executing many of the projects to make this merger as smooth as possible for our colleges. For example, we're merging all of our LibGuides into one site. We're creating new library websites. We're updating our course guides with new course numbers and names with the new standardizations across the colleges. And after a long process this spring, we've selected a robust suite of databases that will be used at all 12 campuses. And of course, they'll have all new access links. And next, I just wanted to mention the free community college plan in Connecticut. It's called PACT, and it started officially in fall 2020. And PACT offers extra funding to cover the gap between federal and state student grants and community college tuition and mandatory fees. And to be eligible for PACT, you must be a high school graduate. You must be a student attending college for the first time and register for 6 or more credits. You must complete federal student aid applications and accept all the awards, and you must remain in good academic standing. And announcing an exciting update on this, on June 5th, Governor Lamont secured permanent funding for PACT and expanded PACT to include students returning to college after being previously enrolled. So originally you had to be a new student, never taken a class before, but now it's going to be extended to people who have been to college. Next slide, please. I'd like to give you just a brief overview of my campus and what digital equity work we're doing locally. I work at Middlesex Community College. Our main campus is in Middletown, Connecticut, with a population of 48,000 people. And 30 minutes away, we have a satellite campus Orville Platte High School. Classes are held after hours in the library. And that's in Meriden, Connecticut, and they have about 60,000 people in Meriden. And beginning in July, all the community colleges will have new college names. Ours will be Connecticut State Community College Middlesex, and our satellite campus will be Connecticut State Community College Middlesex Meriden. Our full-time equivalency is 1,200 students, and we have 3 full-time librarians on staff. Next slide, please. So I'd like to discuss some of the digital equity initiatives at our campus and give you an overview of some of the support available. As we know, the pandemic exacerbated the divide. Before the pandemic, our college did loan equipment. We had a limited quantity of really outdated Windows 7 netbooks, and those were a checkout period of 2 weeks. We had about 118 graphing calculators, about half of which were still available, returned and available for other checkouts. Those are about 6-week checkouts, and we had no hotspots. Since the pandemic, we've added 80 laptops. They're all brand new with Windows 10 and Office 365. They're very powerful. I think they're about $1,200 each. And the funding for those, we started with 40, and those were funded by the IT Campus Equipment Lifecycle Refresh funding. And then those 40 were being used, all of them are being used. So maybe 6 months later, IT was able to secure 20 more through the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or CARES Act. And then we received another 20, and those were funded by the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, or HERF. And these new laptops have circulated over 500 times. And we had extended the 2-week loan to full semester loans, so 500 times with full semester loans. So they're extremely popular. We also added 30 hotspots. In fall 2020, we piloted 10 hotspots, which were also funded through CARES Act. We had full demand for the 10 hotspots. But in spring 2021, Verizon issued a recall on the hotspots because of a battery fire hazard. So we got all of those returned. And since they were being used very well, we got 30 new hotspots with better models. And those were paid for by the HERF fund. And the monthly fees were also paid by HERF fund money. But recently, the monthly maintenance to support the hotspots has been transferred to the campus IT fund. And those are about $50 a month per unit. The good news is they've circulated 125 times since we've offered them. So that's exciting. We also added 20 headsets. Susan reminded me about that with her presentation. Some of our students were coming to campus. They had one on-ground class, they had one online class, they had no equipment. So they started using the lab in the library to take their classes, and we realized they need headsets. A lot of times they didn't have them. So we've gotten 20 new headsets, and those are used for 4-hour checkouts in the library. And those have also been used pretty well. And we added 46 more graphing calculators as well. Some of these calculators were donations. The math department used grant money to secure the money for these calculators. And then some were purchased by college administration, responding to our requests for more, because we would typically check them all out every semester. Those, since January 2020, they've circulated 468 times, and those are also full semester loans. So since the pandemic, we've continued the semester long checkouts, and every year we reevaluate the amount of equipment we have. Can we handle full semester loans? Can we deal with the demand? And so far, we've been able to continue that. We'd love to continue in the future. We also, like many colleges, we waived all of our overdue fines during the pandemic, and we can, continue to have a fine-free system. I also wanted to just briefly talk about some considerations if you wanted to increase all of your equipment as we had. Consider the extra workload for your staff and the skill level. We've determined it's about 10 minutes per transaction. So if you have 80 laptops, 60 calculators, 30 hotspots going out every semester, that's a significant amount of time for your staff or your circulation staff. Also, you'll need time for the cataloging, to set up the policies and procedures, the marketing, creating documentation for use, for, you know, like we have a specific hotspot sheet for every hotspot that has its specific ID and password, a little bit of training when the student's checking it out. I like to make sure they could connect to the device before they walk out, just to make sure that there's no problems with the configuration, because sometimes the Verizon hotspots do drop the configuration. We have to reapply. That's something that I do as well. Another thing is the maintenance of the laptops. Every time the laptops come back, we have, you know, 2 pieces of paperwork that has to be checked out. All the equipment, peripherals have to make sure they're there, you know, check that there's no damage. We also, since they're Windows 10 and we use Office 365, everything is very, very sticky when you're logging in as a student. You know, you can't just delete the browser cache. So now we're doing a full Windows profile delete. So we have, you know, an 8-page piece of documentation to how to delete the profile and add a new one for the next student. And also it guarantees, you know, complete privacy for the student as well. So that's also some time. Another consideration is equipment storage. You know, we wanted, I think when I spoke to IT about getting new laptops originally, we said we would love 20. And then they came to us with 40, which was excellent. But we you know, you need some secure place to put these. We have a cabinet. We've rearranged our cabinet, you know, keep everything in a locked cabinet when it's not, you know, in between semesters. So you have to figure out where you're going to put all this stuff. And also future funding. We're lucky that right now IT is able to continue paying for the hotspots that we have. But another consideration is Verizon only allows you to suspend the devices for 2 weeks, like a couple times a year. So basically, if they're sitting in your cabinet, you're paying for them regardless of if students are using them or not. If they're lost, you can suspend them permanently. You could just mark them as, you know, lost in the system. And that's also something that I do as a librarian. I have to go in and, excuse me, suspend and activate the hotspots. And another consideration of time is, you know, the banner blocks. You know, it's kind of a big thing every semester. You know, I do this big push for reminder calls, for emails, you know, signage, marketing. It's time to return your stuff. And if it doesn't get returned, then I have to, you know, go into Banner and block their accounts as a motivator to get the, you know, the very expensive equipment back. But I mean, all in all, it's been great. We're so pleased that we can give this equipment to the students. The students are very appreciative as well. We want them to succeed, of course. Next slide, please. Some other initiatives briefly is we have this excellent computer club on campus, which is Professor Emerita Donna Hilton was a founding member of this computer club. It's made up of students who assist other students with their devices. And these members are overseen by faculty advisors and educational assistant. It doesn't get off the ground right away. So if we run out of laptops, there's a little bit of a gap, maybe a week or two before, you know, the students are ready. But they also have loaner laptops. That's part of their what they do. And they help with software installation, even on personal devices. Students could come with their own stuff too, like if they're having trouble. They do PC tune-ups, malware removal. They also provide, well, they offer hardware repair, but not including the cost of the parts. They do data backup and recovery, e-cycling, and then there's an annual laptop giveaway funded by generous donations. So maybe 2 months into the semester, the students can write an essay about, you know, why they could use a laptop, and then some lucky students are picked every semester. That's also excellent, I think. We also have, you know, our IT department who helps with, you know, tech support if we can't handle it. And we do have a part-time person, I can't think of her exact title, but she helps students with, you know, Office 365 and things like that. If students want to make an appointment with her, besides the computer club. Another initiative is the Council of Digital Equity and Inclusion on campus. Oops, I'm sorry, I skipped. The Center for there's also equipment in the Center for New Media. We have this excellent Center for New Media program, and you know, they also lend equipment to students like digital video cameras, photo cameras, and other equipment necessary to fulfill their classroom project requirements. And also, moving on, we create, the campus has created a Digital Equity and Inclusion Council on campus, which started in 2020. And they make recommendations to the cabinet on possible policy changes and actions intended to improve campus climate related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And also, the math department, for example, has adopted all open educational resources for the math students. So all the students have low or no cost textbooks, and the librarians are involved with working with faculty on writing grants for this kind of thing, helping them with licensing and how they can edit, you know, the Creative Commons licensing requirements and that kind of thing. I just thought I would mention that as well for a digital equity initiative. And that's all I have. So I'd like to give it to Karen to conclude our presentation.
Thank you, Lisa. So I believe a link to our survey is in the chat right now, and we would greatly appreciate anyone who may not have participated in the first round of the survey to consider completing it now. But there is another survey out right now from the Connecticut Commission for Educational Technology, which is one of CTLPDE's partner organizations. And their survey is being published to gather information about digital equity initiatives underway in the state as the state creates the digital equity plan that Maria mentioned earlier. The digital equity plan is a federally funded initiative that will then inform how the state is going to spend the $100 million of federal funding that Connecticut is expecting to come in over the next 5 years for digital equity initiatives. So the information in the survey that's on the screen right now goes directly to those people who are making those decisions. So if you provide any digital equity services that you really want to sustain or develop further, this is the time to share that information to ensure that it is fully considered as a funding opportunity. I think, you know, as academic librarians, we are all very vested in student success. And if you are seeing in your institution, or if your institution already has programs in place to address where students may be struggling because of digital equity issues, this is the time to make sure that those issues are recognized and addressed so that we can enhance student success. So you can use the link on the screen or the QR code that will bring you right to the survey. I did not see an end date posted on the survey. I did look around a little bit. I know we have Christine Gravero from the State Library here. She may know, but I'm going to go to the next screen, which will open us up to some Q&A.
Thanks, Karen. I'm going to pick this part up. We covered so much today talking about the Connecticut Libraries and Partners for Digital Equity, talked about our public library digital equity survey, and then our academic library digital equity survey, and really dug into some of those details and got to hear wonderful sort of case study information from Lisa and the Middlesex Community College. So just, we've inundated you with information. Hopefully you've had some time to think. We would love to hear from you what your questions are for us, but we also have some questions for you, since you guys are like our academic library focus group. We would love to do our survey again next year, maybe turn this into an annual or a biennial kind of thing, just trying to get more responses on a regular basis about what's happening with digital equity in our state. So we'd love to know like what would be helpful in terms of getting more responses? Is it a timing issue? Is it letting more people fill out the survey? Or maybe you thought of questions you'd like us to ask, or you thought of things you'd like to know from your peers. And this is a great time to tell us, because we can always add those questions to the survey.